Okay, here is a lighter subject to touch upon. Well, kind of. I heard about this the other day on a radio show. It was all about ice cream. What's this, I hear you cry? What has ice cream got to do with anything other than be heavily marketed as something good and generally associated with exotic females in the peak of physical perfection eating it on the adverts? Naturally then, the literal personal self will be taken on board with the association and the link it makes between ice cream and supermodels, and the catchy advertisements and colourful, enticing imagery that make ice creams seem otherworldly. The food of the gods, it would seem, for one cannot surely reach the heights of attractiveness and success without eating ice cream, according to these adverts and commercials. Not to mention the steady and continued bombardment of subliminals that filter into our subconsciousnesses from the television, reinforcing the merits of such illness-inducing foodstuffs. The subliminals work most effectively if they enter our minds unhindered by conscious consideration of them. In other words, they must be within a range of hearing that, although we will pick up on it on a level, as everything is based on a frequency, and so it will affect us in some way or another, we will not consciously be able to hear them. Things of a visual nature, too, can bypass our conscious consideration of them, if cunningly and sneakily inserted between other imagery, in such a fleeting way as to be virtually, if not completely, undetected. If I remember, this was proven beyond a doubt, that all the major food companies employed this brand of sneaky, under the consciousness threshold advertising, and indeed many companies were successfully sued as a result. I understand entire chains of cinemas were taken to task for indulging in this kind of persuasive manipulation. It's proven also how major supermarkets carry hidden, subliminal, food-buying encouraging frequencies blended in with the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi that is also prevalent in virtually every public space of shopping convenience. So, you have in fact the double whammy of cancer, body-destroying microwave radiation in tandem with subliminal encouragement to further purchase foodstuffs, that despite what the supermodels, superphysical vehicles on the adverts suggest, will cause such delights as diabetes and so on. And we go back to the nature of creation, the psych realms, the simulation set up in such a way by the All-Is, that everything in creation is cause and effect. So eating copious quantities of ice cream will cause less than favourable distortions to your holographic electromagnetic energy field that is your vehicle, and the effects then will be illnesses. And with the extreme taste enhancers we find embedded in most of the foods we put in our mouths, we are slowly conditioned to seek sustenance on the basis of its taste, rather than the nutritional value of it. This makes no sense, but makes sense to the physical personal self, who loves indulgences, thrills, and taste overloads, and then is puzzled as to why it can't breathe anymore, or is rendered unable to operate effectively due to sickness. For yes, too, the emotional astral body loves its thrills. It seeks emotional stimulation, for this is its nature. And so, like any thrill, addiction to food is an easy trap for the emotional body to fall into. And thus, ice creams and things of this nature will once again assist in keeping us emotionally stimulated, add to the focus most people already have, which is firmly locked on the physical astral life levels only, and ensure more so we are the effects of what we are constantly setting in motion. We can then add taste-enhanced foods to the list of ideas and thrills in creation that will keep us chasing them to the ends of our lifetimes here and into future lifetimes also. And all this is also ingraining itself in our causal bodies and charged with the emotion we incorporate and add to it. Our subconscious memory vehicles will be full to bursting with agreed upon nonsense that keeps us restricted, all the emotionally charged ideas. It's a wonder where people who overly focus on food might be projecting too, in terms of future lifetimes. If, as we know, we create our future lifetimes and vehicles based on what we are focusing on and projecting now, then those whose lives revolve around food, those that live to eat rather than eat to live, might be constructing a dimension or world out there of a very strange nature indeed. Just as how all the obsessed computer gamers are and have created a world or dimension where the elements of their games are in effect, as I have seen on the real side in my dreams. Worlds right now that are just like a computer game. People running around, killing monsters, and gleaning levels and trinkets for their monster-slaying deeds. It sounds incredible, but imagine the combined creative force of millions, if not billions, of computer game fanatics. And they surely must number in these quantities, focusing and living for the adventure fantasy games they play. They unknowingly are creating an actual lifetime that will run along the lines of the computer games they delight in. Maybe they will even like such worlds as these. But surely it's far more enjoyable to be playing the game without having to actually suffer having your brains bashed in by an orc, or being roasted alive by a dragon. So maybe when they find themselves in a world and future lifetime of this type, it won't be quite so thrilling. But then they will be unaware how they got there, another unconscious lifetime, but an experience nonetheless, from which awareness can be gleaned in a rather brain-bashing, dragon-roasting way. Maybe in future lifetimes beyond that, if they ever return to a world where their brains are safe from orcs, the causal vehicle memory of that very harsh lifetime will be triggered if they ever encounter a computer game of this type again. And computer games would then seem abhorrent to them. They won't know why, and assuming such games will exist in future lifetimes, or anything will exist for that matter, for how much time do we have? With the agreed upon demise and implosion of creation. So regardless of their awareness or lack of it, you can see how the potential experience of going through an actual lifetime in a virtual computer game world may well rid them of the want to become addicted to such games again in future lifetimes beyond that. It's a process of awakening through lifetimes of experiencing everything, and slowly but surely we build a subconscious catalogue of ideas and things we have caused, and the effects, if not favourable, will result, one would imagine, in the individual less inclined to attach themselves to thrills of this nature. Less likely, I say, as people do fall into patterns of behaviour and routines with their created consciousnesses. But experiences of a nature such as described would surely help steer us clear of repeating at least the more extreme decisions and choices. So, as I say, if computer addicts are building their own computer worlds, then what of those addicted and completely focused on other things? What are they collectively building? Especially a focus of attention which captures the collective focus of vast swathes of people. Imagine all the football fanatics. They might wind up living on a giant football, or something along those lines. It sounds fanciful, but this is very real. We create individually our futures, and collectively, through focus, entire worlds and dimensions, where the particulars of the focus will be experienced. As I said on a previous show, being in a computer game world, one would be in a computer game within a computer game, as this creation is all a holographic computer simulation after all. Going back briefly to mind control through subliminals, I remember scientists, those obviously not working on behalf of the reptilians, who had discovered the sheer volume of messages inserted in and through every advert on the television, beneath the threshold of our hearing, or a visual incorporated so swiftly that although all visual information goes in, if it is too fast to see, or lost amongst a mass of other imagery, we consciously do not process it, and straight into the subconscious it will go. That's how symbols and such work. If their meaning is unknown, we will overlook them, but we will still incorporate them into our subconscious, and whatever they represent will be affecting us too. So the world is awash with these Illuminati, satanic, reptilian symbols, for the purpose ultimately, as everything in creation is pretty much designed this way, to keep us in creation and limited. It's all about control. Anyway, these scientists found all kinds of words and visuals, and below the hearing threshold, of a very derogatory and indeed controlling nature. Such words as obey, you are a slave, You are worthless, etc., etc. And so, people will be taking these subliminals into their subconsciousnesses and affected accordingly. Of course, real awareness supersedes everything that can be thrown at us on the creational life levels. Yes, it affects the vehicles we are experiencing creation with. And yes, we can and do get subconsciously programmed at a life level beyond the physical too, directly into our causal bodies. But a connection to the real universes and the is with the new sound, the new you, will hold us in good stead. All these silly and old agreed upon ideas, subconscious and often deeply rooted agreements and attachments will be unveiled, like going into another room in your house, checking out the books there, and discarding old books that serve no purpose other than causing clutter. And like these books, sure, keep some by way of reference, but no need to carry them around with you. Take a peek at some of the books for reference purposes, but then put them back when you are finished. No need to be attached to them and the effects of them, for carrying and clinging onto these old references will do nothing but keep you focused and aligned to what they are referencing. And generally that is creation. They are experiences, nothing more. They are not realities. The father of advertising was in fact an individual called Edward Bernays, an American-born public relations consultant. Well, that was his official title, but effectively it was his genius, or more so, his insidious, reptilian, bought-off claim to infamy, that began, at least in modern times, the means by which products were sold more effectively. Through cunning imagery, association, as in associating a product with glamour, money and prestige, and clever stick-in-the-mind catchphrases. Finger-licking good is one example of a catchphrase coined by this man. And the clever advertisements which promoted smoking, associating smoking with being a real man, a man of distinction, etc. At one time, bacon was considered to be the most untouched, undesirable meat, eaten only as a last resort, if all other alternatives were unavailable. But through advertisement, bacon would become not only accepted, but a stable part of the English breakfast, and take its place amongst all the other meats consumed. Honestly, there's little they cannot promote when they utilise association, and these days it is more so through collectivism, for more now than ever before, the world being such a small place through technology, a person's status and approval rating in the eyes of others is essential for psychological well-being. So advertise a product as being an essential ingredient to ensure one's coolness and thus approval from others, and you can get people to eat or wear whatever you want. So, getting back to where I began, in a roundabout, all over the countryside sort of way, they are introducing new ice creams that are made from churned up maggots. Yes, in keeping with the drive to reduce carbon footprints and the impact on the environment through human-made climate change activities, dairy and meat consumption must now be reduced drastically. The world is polluted and self-destructing at an alarming rate, that is a given, but climate change is a separate issue, and one that has no bearing on the destruction of the planet. But dare suggest this, and one may be branded a climate denier. Horror of horrors! Time tied under the bed, methinks. But in fact, laws are in the pipeline that will eventually see people locked in mental institutions for being of a conspiratorial nature, and in opposition to such things as vaccinations, climate change, etc., etc. For these are now considered by our controllers to be indications of psychosis, and must be treated accordingly. In fact, people are being taken now and assessed psychologically for daring to suggest vaccinations are harmful. This will continue to escalate until the point where nothing other than what the controllers deem speakable may be uttered, or incarceration and removal from the population will be required, lest the crazy conspirators pollute the healthy minds of the stable, vaccine-taking, fluoride-drinking, ice-cream-eating public. Climate change is just that, a change in the climate, incurred by cycles of the sun. Originally it was called global warming, but when it was discovered this wasn't the case, that the world was not, in fact, warming, it had to be altered to climate change, which on the surface of it means nothing other than a change in the climate. All this is being orchestrated for the purposes of control of every aspect of our lives, from our movements, where we live, what we can eat, pretty much everything you can imagine. Children are being brainwashed in this regard too, through school, and are accepting the climate change myth, to the point where you see them protesting and demanding further shackles for their and everyone else's enslavement. And now they are, in fact, not only demonizing the sun, with the agenda then to ultimately secure agreement to remove its harmful presence as they see it, but also they are demonizing carbon dioxide. Apparently, the essential element that is required for all life to survive, what we in fact breathe out is carbon dioxide that the plants breathe in, must now be reduced, and eventually there must be zero carbon. In other words, they are practically telling you of their schemes to robotize everything, kill everything living, in order to save the planet from essential elements and sunlight that has maintained life on this rock for millions of years. So, about that ice cream, the maggot ice cream. The latest drive is, as I said, to reduce meat and dairy consumption, and they intend to do this through alternative foodstuffs. One example being that they have discovered a viable means of making ice cream that discludes the need for cows, which is among the things they now cite as unsustainable in our fast approaching and more controlled dystopian world. They are grinding up maggots, and this will be the dairy alternative of the future, along with alternative lab-grown meats. full of all kinds of dubious nasties, I have no doubt. And interesting, too, is all the game shows where individuals must engage in eating bugs and things of this nature. Celebrities in the jungle, celebrities surviving here and there, and wherever else, made to eat insects for survival and challenges. Getting people, in fact, used to the idea of eating insects and things that one normally wouldn't even consider eating other than for survival, life and death purposes. They are making it acceptable and normal. And if the celebrities are doing it, it must be safe, right? So, I look forward to my maggot ice cream in the future, which will probably follow my maggot and chips for dinner. I dread to think what they might do with the chips. I wonder if our genetically modified potatoes are safe. Do you know McDonald's chips have 17 ingredients in them? I thought chips generally consisted of the single ingredient of potato, but there you go. One last thing on ice creams. I was saying to Dwayne how in a dream I saw the controllers make use of the reference of the new in a shampoo commercial. It was new shampoo, or something along those lines. Dwayne would say that the controllers always seek to hijack the references that he uses for the is, and attach ideas and distortions to them, and drag them into the physical and astral levels. Many a time has Dwayne had to decide new words and terminology for this very reason. The is, becoming the all is with 3 L's and 3 S's, due to the reptilians revealing a terrorist cell as being ISIS, as an example. You can use the references for a time, but soon they become too distorted, and the property of the reference grabbing reptoids, and so updates are needed. I remember once Eric Oak asked on a Skype about if the new you might ever change in the future too, and it's conceivable. After all, Amen, Aum, and more recently the Hugh had to be abandoned, no longer backed by the guides and the is, because of it being dragged into the doldrums of the reptilians, and now associated with and referencing creation, with creation dragging ideas hanging from them. Unless an idea references the is, and the intent of the individual presenting the reference is pure and with the is, and it's for the benefit of people's awareness, then it references creation and is restricting, limited to the psych realms, and everyone gets tap-lined through agreement to it. Anyway, ice creams. Yes, I saw they are now selling a new brand of ice creams at the Cabal slave pits that I work in, which is a store which is predominantly a peddler of poisons and death. The ice cream there now is called New You Ice Cream. So, a little along the lines of my new shampoo dream. They are using the word new with food products, probably knowingly, in an attempt to steal and distort the reference, the connection to the all is. So, potentially, should this persist, maybe Dwayne may have to choose a new sound that makes the connection to the true reality life is. As the new man, Dwayne decides the terminology, but must have the backing of the guides and the all is, and this is how it works. Dwayne must always stay steps ahead of the reference thieving controllers. In a way, it isn't really stealing, they are just references, and anybody can make use of them however way they wish. But nevertheless, if the intention of the reference users isn't aligned with the is and the whole of life, then the reference can become tainted, and ultimately will need replacing, and so the new may go the way of the Om, Amen, Orm, and the Hu. We will have to see.